They say the end of days are coming. It could happen any number of ways. It might be nukes. Could be a super flu and people fall like rain. Hell, it could be the rapture and Sister Eleanor gets left at the altar. Or zombies. I really hope it's not zombies. They scare the bejesus out of me, but it could be zombies. Whatever it is, I'm planning on sticking around for the long haul. See, my guess is it's not going to be one thing, something that you can point to. It's just the enshittification. It's going to swallow us up. The days aren't going to end, but society will. It's already happening. The frog boils slowly, as they say. You know, first institutions fail, then the dollar collapses, the grid goes down, manufacturing disappears, and the trucks will stop rolling. In short order, you'll have total lawlessness. And you may have a bunker full of food and solar backup, but what are you going to do when a gang takes over your house? People, when it's fight or flight time, you better have a way to move. Most people are going to be walking or riding bikes. You see, the problem is that modern cars are just computers on wheels. They need their regular firmware updates just to keep the transmission shifting properly. When the internet goes down, or an EMP hits, or gas turns to sludge, you're dead in the water. Those Barbie Jeeps with slide-out kitchens and rooftop tents are going to make fantastic chicken coops. Yep, it's time to get back to analog. I need to find an end-of-days mobile, and I don't want to pick the wrong one. I need something that's going to perform when the grid goes down and the refineries quit refining. It's got to have a proven drivetrain that I can work on with simple tools. I need good mileage, but it's also got to have a good payload and towing capacity. And then, how many were sold? I need to be able to scavenge parts. Can it run on propane or filtered fryer grease? You see where I'm going here? It's a whole new approach to shopping for a used car. I had to get organized, so I created a 17-point test and a list of 15 classic four-wheel drives that I thought might score high. All the questions are weighted towards an end days scenario, so I'm not looking at price or comfort features. I'm asking the one question that matters in the apocalypse. Who will survive? Each of the 15 candidates gets its own episode, so I can strip it down to its frame. I find the best drivetrain in a line, then I score it in the 17 categories. The final score goes on the leaderboard. It's pretty simple stuff, but I discovered so many fascinating things along the way that I figured I'd invite you all to join me. My friends call me Casey Jones, and I call this project the End of Days Report.
There's a storm on the mountain, there's a hell on the highway. The desert's like an ocean, the sky's like a minefield. I can feel the earth shaking beneath my feet. I'm just looking for a new life, and it sure ain't easy, but I gotta believe that I'm on my way. Oh, I'm on my way.
The Toyota 4Runner is a four-cylinder SUV from the time before SUVs even had a name. In 1984, a fuel-efficient 4x4 designed to be a daily driver and an off-road adventure vehicle was kind of a new thing. There were a lot of radical changes taking place in the auto industry at that time. Anti-lock brakes, independent front suspensions, and electronic fuel injection were all becoming mainstream. The North American 4Runner's first generation fell flat in the middle of that transition. The 84 through 87 4Runners all had the same pickup chassis with the rear seat, the roll bar, and a removable fiberglass camper shell. But what year had the Apex configuration? The 84 was carbureted with a solid front axle. The 85 kept the solid axle, but introduced electronic fuel injection. In 86, Toyota introduced 12 new failure points when they replaced the solid axle with independent front suspension. And I'm looking for the ideal Forerunner. My test doesn't even consider automatic transmissions because automatic is just another word for complicated. And that's not going to work in the end of days. The solid front axle simplicity made it the clear choice, so that eliminated the 86 and the 87. The only choice left was between the carbureted 22R and the electronic fuel-injected 22RE. I almost skipped the research and chose the carburetor. Common sense tells you that mechanical fuel delivery is going to be the best choice during the end of days. But I always do my research. I read manuals and forums, and I watched YouTube videos till my eyes crossed. It turns out the carburetor had some issues. It had a tendency to stall on steep climbs, and its maze of rubber vacuum lines tended to get brittle and leak. The EFI works like a charm, but it is vulnerable to EMPs. You have to keep an extra ECU and an igniter in a Faraday cage, but I decided that keeping 2 spare parts was easier than dealing with the carburetor issues, so I chose my candidate, the 1985 Forerunner with the 5-speed manual transmission, the solid front axle, and the 22RE engine. I've run it through the test, and the results are in. Let me show you what I found. Of course, it always starts with the engine, and the 22R is probably the best 4-cylinder engine ever made. It's been the motor of choice for guerrilla warfare since the 1980s. It'll last over 350,000 miles if you treat it right, but that's not going to be easy when society crumbles. One thing is sure, it will not tolerate major overheating events. The aluminum head assembly dissipates heat differently than the iron block, so you're going to get warping if you run it hot. Make sure that the radiator, all hoses, and the thermostat are new at the start, and hoard some spares right now so you don't have to scavenge for used stuff later. The W56 transmission is a beast. The shifter sits right over the transmission's shifter rails, so there's no external linkage that can break. It's going to last 250,000 miles, maybe more. The transfer case is gear on gear. There are no chains to stretch or shatter. That's what we want here. Some off-roaders are daisy-chaining 2 transfer cases together to get ridiculous crawling ratios like 100-to-1 or 200-to-1. I mean, you can literally idle up a rock face. I personally think I'd stay with the stock, but you do have that option. In the late 70s, a lot of car manufacturers started coating the timing chain guides with nylon. They said it was to make the engines run quieter. More conspiratorial folks said it was designed obsolescence. The bottom line is that if the 40-year-old plastic crumbles, you're in for a world of hurt. The chain will literally saw through the aluminum timing cover and into the water jacket, and when the coolant and the oil mix, you get the pink milkshake of death. And that's as bad as it sounds, so you need to pick up some aftermarket steel guides from one of the major off-road parts companies. They even make kits for double chain conversion if you'd like. Since we're on the subject, the Forerunner scored really high in aftermarket support because there are several companies still making parts and upgrade kits specifically for the Forerunner. Another high test score was in suspension. The Forerunner has simple leaf springs on all 4 corners. This is covered wagon technology, and covered wagon level of comfort too. But it's easy to fix, and that's what we want. No rubber boots to tear, no complicated joints to worry about. The solid front axle is like a railroad tie with wheels. It'll cut through sagebrush like a lawnmower. The steering isn't perfect in terms of mechanical sovereignty. It uses hydraulic fluid and a pump. But you can still drive it dry if you have big muscles. It's not as complicated as rack and pinion systems, and the experts say it's over-engineered, which is a good thing. Keep some Dextron ATF fluid and a spare pump just to be safe. So how's it going to handle an EMP? That was the sacrifice I made when I chose EFI over the carburetor. The Toyota ECU uses older, integrated circuit technology, so it might actually survive an electromagnetic pulse that knocks out the newer microprocessors. Like a solar flare, maybe. But a big one from a nuke is going to fry the ECU and the igniter. So you're going to need to keep spares in a Faraday cage, and you can swap them out in about an hour. Finding parts is going to be a big deal, so I made that a big part of the test. When you're looking to scavenge parts, you want to know that they are in fact out there somewhere. With the 4Runner, your chances are pretty good. The 22RE was the heart of the Toyota line for nearly 15 years. Not just the 4Runner, but also in the pickup and the Celica. Toyota sold millions of them. And its 6-lug wheels are standard, so you'll be able to find wheels everywhere, not just on Toyotas. When gas stations run dry, you're really going to value fuel capacity and range. And the 4Runner isn't very good in this area. Its max range at 19 miles per gallon is 327 miles. The 17-gallon tank just isn't going to cut it for long-distance trips. If you insist on trying to get to the border, you're going to have to add an auxiliary fuel tank. However, when you add that weight, you're going to feel it. I'd classify the 4Runner more as a local vehicle or a farm tool. If it goes cross-country, it better be in a caravan. It is a pretty good hunting truck. It's narrow, so it'll squeeze down overgrown forest roads better than most. It's big enough to sleep in, or the topper can be used separately as a lean-to, which is pretty handy. But you better not get stuck. It doesn't accept PTO-driven winches, and it doesn't have true recovery points. It just has tie-down loops. You really need to get some bolted recovery points installed if you're going to go backcountry. The 4Runner has decent cargo capacity, but its payload capacity is pretty weak. 4 adults and some jerry cans full of gas is pretty much the max. It's a 4-cylinder engine. There are limits. Alternative fuels are a big part of the end-of-days analysis. You have to have as many options as possible. The 4Runner can run on gas, propane, and wood. Spark engines can't run on biodiesel or other oils, but 3 out of 4 is as good as you can get. It also scored some points because it'll tolerate the wrong engine oil better than most cars. Fuel economy has always been a big deal. It'll definitely be a factor in the end of days. The 4Runner gets 19 miles per gallon when it's empty. That's not bad. But that number falls like a rock as you load it up. You're probably looking at 10 or 11 with a full load, and that's not very good. Field repair is a big consideration. I looked at everything from tool requirements to engine base space to score this category. The 4Runner is really strong here. You can disassemble the whole thing with a basic metric toolkit. The brakes scored pretty low. You can see the street vehicle here. It's got discs in the front, unventilated drums in the back. The drums can get hot under load. The forums recommend transplanting in a later Tacoma braking system if you're going to be pushing the limits. The 4Runner was looking like a title contender until this final test. Power takeoff ports. Most expedition vehicles let you run anything from water pumps to generators by attaching a shaft right to the PTO and the transfer case. But the North American 4Runner isn't one of them. Scoring a 0 here is not good. That's probably enough to deny it the trophy. When you add all the scores up and divide by 17, you get a final score of 77.83. My formulas are designed to make 75 the bar you have to clear to make the cut and land on the leaderboard, so the 4Runner kinda squeaked in. Nevertheless, we've got our first numbers, so the marker meets the whiteboard. The 4Runner starts in first place, of course. But it'll have to hold that top spot against 14 other competitors. I'll be surprised if it wins the trophy, but I'm more convinced than ever that the 1985 4Runner will have a place on the road in the end of days. I describe it as the utility player. It's not the star, but it made a team, and it can cover second in a pinch. Its engineering is a relic of a truck-first era where endurance was valued over luxury. And the result is a powertrain that outlives most of its modern equivalents. It can't do everything, but you can count on it for the things that it does well. If you want the complete 13-page report in PDF form with all my source links, you can get it on my Patreon page. This was the first of 15 reports. It's going to be a long, strange trip. The Chevy Suburban is next. Click right there on the screen to check it out. This has been Casey Jones for the End of Days Report. Thanks for riding along.